Welcome. I'm so happy to have Dr. Shelley Meyer with me today on the podcast and on YouTube, depending on how you're interacting with this. I love to let my audience kind of see a couple doctors have a conversation about a subject that we find interesting together, because we do like to talk about, where our interests intersect and how that works for all of you when you come into our offices and ask us for help.
Definitely.
So Dr. Shelley Meyer is in primary care and functional medicine, which is a great kind of specialized look at root causes of diseases. And Shelley, if you could just tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Heather. It's so great to be here. I started out my professional life as a dietitian. So I went to undergrad, got my bachelor's in nutrition, got my master's in nutrition, and then I was a dietitian for a few years and then just decided, hey, I want to do a little more. So I went back to medical school. And family medicine, I'm sure you understand, was always appealing because it never got boring. And there was always something
Yes.
interesting coming into your office. And then you could just work with the whole lifespan, from babies to people in their elderly years. So that was a great combination. I felt like to have the nutrition background and to be in family medicine. But then, as you go along in medicine and you realize you're not getting the time with the patients that you really want, you're not getting to really help them with what the whole lifestyle piece that might be contributing, you to get a little dissatisfied in some situations. So that's how I felt. And having the nutrition training before made me realize, well, I really want to approach kind of the whole picture and get to, like you said, the root cause of disease or dysfunction and help look at it from a lot of different angles. So that's why I went back and did my functional medicine training as well.
That's cool. I feel like I send a lot of people to functional medicine. They'll say, I'm seeing my regular doctors and somehow are just not quite getting there. And I said, oh, I know who you need to go see.
Yeah, I mean, that never gets boring either. And it's great to have that time with patients and to really get to know all aspects of their life and try to help them figure out where things may have started and, do the testing. Functional medicine, we do a decent amount of kind of alternative testing to figure out how the microbiome is coming together with the hormone piece and all that. So it's kind of like being a detective in a lot of ways.
Yeah, cool. Well, I invited Shelley today to talk a little bit about cortisol and sleep, because in weight loss, sleep is super important because we're trying to align our digestive hormones. And when our cortisol is off, this messes things up. So I was looking at some data in 1910, people actually, I know it's like really old days, but people actually slept 9 hours every night, which is so different than now.
Totally.
And I was looking up also that 30% of adults kind of in their 30s to 60s, 30% of them get less than 6 hours every night, which to me is almost shocking anyway, because I can't even imagine functioning on less than 6 hours at a night. But wow, but that really shoots up your cortisol levels. And cortisol, for my audience especially, is associated with abdominal obesity. I remember when I had the kind of perimenopause hormone changes, that noticing a lot more weight going on there in the middle. But it also just affects your insulin to the point where your insulin goes up as well. And insulin is our fat storage hormone.
Yes.
And so that really gets in the way of normal weight, maintaining a normal weight. And if you're trying to lose weight, getting in the way of that. So can we just take a supplement and fix that? Or...
I know. Cause in my world in functional medicine, I do hear a lot of that. And we use our share of supplements, but we balance it with lifestyle change. So I often hear that from patients is, well, what supplement do I need to be on to fix my cortisol? And you cannot supplement your way out of a cortisol problem. It's just impossible. Yes, it can be a supplement in the true sense of the word, that it can help the situation and help, there are adaptogenic herbs and nutrients that can come together and really help tone down the cortisol when it's too high and make it a little bit more robust when it is too low. But you have to, and not 80% of it is that sleeping, like we were talking about, getting the sleep, the 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Stress, that's the main thing. Stress, that's our stress.
Yeah.
Cortisol is our stress hormone. So we have to have all these things in place to address our stress response, our situations that are creating stress, setting
Mhm.
boundaries, sleeping, eating to support a healthy cortisol level. There's so many things we have to look at when we're thinking about cortisol and imbalanced cortisol.
Talk a little bit more about eating for balancing cortisol. What are good things to think about?
Well, one, we have to think about how sugar and processed carbs affect our cortisol, because the cortisol levels and the glucose can kind of mimic each other. And so when we are eating something that goes straight into sugar in our body, and not only cookies or, cane
Yeah.
sugar or drinks or anything that have sugar in them, but the breads, the pastas, the staples of the American diet that are low fiber, high carb, that's going to go straight to that cortisol response too, and spike it up and then maybe crash it down. You have this stress response over time, making it be uneven and imbalanced. And then you add these foods in that do the same thing. And then we have a really imbalanced cortisol and imbalanced stress response. And then also caffeine, because we're all addicted to our
Yeah.
caffeine and
Yeah.
our coffee and everything. And not necessarily, I'm not telling everybody that they have to go off coffee or they have to go off caffeine, but it's going to also shoot it up and cause some imbalance too. So there has to be some limit. There have to be some boundaries and limits on caffeine. Um,
So when I
and
used to get really stressed out and then I always wanted to eat like something sweet or some
right.
cereal or something like that. So really that was like a double whammy against.
Yeah, and that's what you're craving, right? Because it's also what you're craving when your blood sugar is imbalanced. You're craving that, and you think it's going to make it everything better at the time, but then you know how you end up feeling more depleted after that, usually.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah, so you see a balance there. So those are the main things I talk to people about, and then making sure they have a balanced snack or small meal or just meal in general with protein, fat, and carbs together, coming together, as I'm sure you talk about.
Yeah.
The people that you work with, that all those pieces have to be there, so you're not hitting that blood sugar or cortisol with just the carbs and then having that crash afterwards.
Yeah. I've been hearing people online saying, don't eat your carbs naked.
Yeah,
Always
no naked carbs.
some protein and fiber and fat and
Yeah,
something to go with it.
definitely.
So when people ask you about caffeine, what's kind of a good rule for looking at like when to stop caffeine? What do you like to tell people?
Well,
Is there
I'm
like a
trying to,
certain time of day that you say maybe quit at this time?
yeah, I usually say around noon, which isn't a popular, popular thing that people like to hear. But yeah, I like to encourage noon, and then if possible, if it's straight up strong coffee, like 8 ounces or less per day. And then if you need a little something in the afternoon, maybe a green tea, which can be overall hormone supporting and sometimes actually be helpful with the cortisol, even though it does have some caffeine in it. It still has that ritual of a warm cup of something, but it's not that straight to the cortisol that the coffee is.
Nice, nice. So do you feel like the people that you talk to who aren't getting enough sleep, are they having trouble falling asleep, do you think? Or is it just that their lifestyle doesn't allow for more than, 6 hours of sleep? Or what do you see? Is it?
It all depends on the person. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people are structuring their lives to not allow enough sleep. They're, especially, us as physicians, we meet other physicians that are professional women, or in general, people that are working late into the evening after they put their kids to bed, or after the
Yeah.
family, whatever it needs to be done at home is done, and then you're in your pajamas on the computer doing something to do with work and totally screwing up your melatonin levels and all that. And so
Yeah.
that that can be it, that they're just not kind of preserving that enough time to sleep. And then the hormonal piece of it, right? So if
Yeah.
particularly for women, postmenopausal, perimenopausal, they're having maybe some estrogen dominance or too low of progesterone, and then that's not allowing them to get that good quality sleep. So there could be all kinds of pieces like that, or they could be overcaffeinated with the high cortisol and the high carb diet, and then that's contributing. So it's a complex picture that we really have to talk to people about when we're working with them on sleep.
It is. I remember having my own sleep really disturbed by perimenopause
Me
hormone
too.
changes. And I used to think that sleep was my superpower because I could sleep anytime. And then to have it interrupted, I felt terrible. And so, of course, then I drank more caffeine the next day.
Right. And then the
Which,
cycle just continues, right? Feeds off
yeah,
of each other.
yeah. So, do you have some ideas for just people who are just like want a better sleep routine? What do you offer, or what would you suggest? What are some things to look at? People want a better sleep routine.
Yeah, I think, well, have to look at, like what I was just saying about working in our bedrooms, in particular, in our beds with our computers. Keeping the computer, the phone away out of the bedroom, get that natural melatonin boosted back up again. Maybe wearing, if we do have to work into the evening or look at a device, or want to watch a TV show, wearing the amber glasses or the blue light blocking glasses to help naturally build our melatonin. Um, and maybe even taking some melatonin if you have trouble falling asleep or staying
Mhm.
asleep. Really working on that stress management, maybe getting a nighttime routine in place where you are getting away from those devices at a certain time, maybe an hour before bed, hopefully further than that,
Mhm.
but at least starting there. Um, and then having some quiet time. um, doesn't have to necessarily be meditation, but that's great. Just
Sure.
having some time, maybe it's a bath, maybe it's you take a bath every night,
Mhm.
or you do a couple relaxing yoga poses, or you journal, something that doesn't involve external stimulation, and that kind of can get you away from that
I love
constant
that.
buzzing.
And it's
So,
funny because I think that we sometimes think that like turning the TV on and then just zoning out is relaxation, but I was reading that that's not necessarily relaxing our body and our brains.
it's not. And I have so many of my patients in my practice that are like, I say, what do you do to decompress? Well, I watch TV, I binge watch Netflix or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not doing it. And maybe there are some things you can watch on TV that would be relaxing. That's kind of the
Sure.
minority. A lot of the times we're watching something that's very distracting, maybe news or political situations that are going on, or things in the world that are not, decompressing our evening routine, or some of the dramas or the violent kind of things that shows that are out there now are definitely disrupting our sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you offered like a bunch of different ideas that people could use to decompress, because for some people, like doing some of those stretches, yoga stretches, would be very meaningful versus
Mhm.
sitting down and journaling. They're really different things, but um, experimenting with some things and seeing, do I like this? Does this really help me? Or,
Yeah,
there's a lot of choices of things to do.
there are. As long as it's quiet and it brings you peace and
Mhm.
it's not distracting, and you could even turn the lights down low, just something to give your brain that message that, okay, this is when we calm down and this is when
Right,
we get
right.
ready. And just having that routine, because the hormones and insulin and cortisol and all that feed off of routine. And if you can, introduce a calming, regular pace of a routine, you're going to have a lot better hormone balance and a lot better sleep.
That's interesting, isn't it? That our bodies then get the signal. Oh, she's sitting down and journaling, or oh, she's doing that
Right.
shoulder stretch thing, and it's a signal that our body says, oh, let's send all the calming hormones now.
Yeah, definitely. Our bodies are interesting things.
They are. And when we kind of understand a little bit more about how they work, then we can, use those natural rhythms to help us out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Well, thank you so much. I do recommend though that people, if you're having trouble with sleep disturbances, falling asleep, that finding a functional medicine doctor in your town would be a great place to visit.
I
If you've kind
agree.
of tried the usual things and it's not working, because there are more things to try. Um,
Hmm.
and to look at, your functional medicine doctor can do blood tests to see what other imbalances, may be helped with a supplement or a dietary change or something that could make a big difference in your life. So
Definitely. There's a lot of tests that we do that you can't, we can do some via blood work, but there's some other alternative tests that we do that you can see a pattern, like particularly with cortisol, we like to do
mhm.
salivary or urinary metabolite testing, and that can definitely show us how things, because people can be high cortisol sometimes and low cortisol sometimes. And then one of my favorites is called the Dutch test, and it can show your cortisol pattern all from little urine strips, and then your melatonin level and estrogen and progesterone and all that. So there's some interesting testing out there that can all relate to sleep.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much for talking about this today. I know because it messes up your insulin cycle and makes it hard to lose weight. I knew that my audience would be super interested in hearing about this. And
Yes.
sometimes they hear me say, you need 7 to 9 hours of sleep, and they go, yeah.
Right. You hear that same rule over and over, and you just kind of dismiss it. And sleep has definitely become something that is taken for granted in our world. And like, oh, I'll sleep later. Sleep when I'm dead, right?
Right.
We don't want to wait.
That's okay.
Yeah. So I think it's an important conversation to have, and particularly with in relation to weight.
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. So
pets love to show up.
Good.
If you're not on the video, my cat just walked in. So
yeah. Well, pets are great stress relievers, so they can bring that
are.
cortisol level down too.
Yeah, they really are.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a good conversation to have, and it's an important thing to talk about.
Thank you again. And I will put in the show notes all your contact information too, so that people can look at your YouTube channel. It has a lot of good stuff about functional medicine.
Yes.
And so people can find you as well. So
thanks so much.
Shelley.
Thank you.